ask me. What about you? Is this a storm in a teacup? Is this a row about nothing? Or is Rishi Sunak absolutely wrong? Not just to have said what he did, but still hours on, having refused to apologise for it. It's worth taking a step back for a moment, isn't it? It's worth taking a step back and wondering why this has become such a row today. Because Rishi Sunak has been making jokes about Keir Starmer's position on trans rights and trans people pretty much every week at PMQs. But it seems that only now, when the mourning mother of a murdered trans teenager is in the Commons, that it becomes beyond the pale. Only then, apparently, is it unacceptable. Does make you think. If a joke isn't acceptable, if it's said in front of the people who it directly or indirectly relates to, then is the joke really acceptable at all? Is it really the case that all Rishi Sunak has done wrong is say this in front of Brianna Ghey's mum? Or actually, doesn't this highlight that the way that Rishi Sunak, and he is far from alone in this, has used trans people as a political stick to beat Keir Starmer with, the way that those people have been weaponised and used as a political pawn in Westminster power games, that's the fundamental problem, isn't it? Yes, it was particularly bad that he said it when he did today. But it wouldn't be a problem if those jokes weren't tactless and classless and tasteless in the first place. What do you make of this? Particularly interested to hear from you this hour. You'll go straight to the top of the queue if you are a trans person or you are a close friend or a relative of one. What do you make of what you heard today? What do you make of the fact that so often when it comes to political punch-ups in the Commons, it's you or your loved one, their rights, their identity that is used as part of the debate? Should Rishi Sunak apologise, and what do you make of the fact that he hasn't? 0345 6060 973. Let's talk to Frida Wallace, trans activist, host of the Frida Media podcast. Frida, good to have you on the programme tonight. Thank you very much for joining us. I wonder what your reaction was when you heard either Rishi Sunak or heard about what Rishi Sunak had said this afternoon. Good evening.
Hi, Ben. Thank you for having me on. First of all, I think Rishi's had a bad week when it comes to classlessness. And didn't he just make a bet with Piers Morgan over something? And I just really despair that this is a leader of our country. Now, it's no surprise to trans people at all, because this has been going on with the Tory party and their declining death rows for quite a while now, where they're using culture war issues as a kind of blunt weapon against the opposition. And, you know, when it came up, when they were asking Keir Starmer, can a woman have a penis? And when journalists ask those kind of questions, not only did it dehumanize trans people, they're just kind of like lowering themselves to a really dumbed down debate. And they're doing it because it's like a gotcha moment, isn't it? Because everything's like a social media gotcha moment. And I think that's the problem. But trans people listening to that, I mean, while we are shocked because of the elements of Brianna Ghey's mother being there, we're not shocked by what he said. We're kind of immune to it now. It doesn't even, if this would be any other day, it's kind of common parlance. I don't want to group you in as but your broadcaster, LBC, has platformed people and ask those kind of questions and dehumanize trans people constantly. And we've created a media climate of that. Now, what I try to do, like when I always approach this, when I speak to people on the podcast and things, I want to have an open discussion about what it means to be trans, what is a woman and all that. And these are all really philosophical debates. You know, they're very deep and they can get quite convoluted. But when it comes down to the tabloid element, it just gets dumbed down, doesn't it? So there's no actual debate. There's no actual discussion about people's real lives. People are kind of avatars and pawns
in a political game was how I phrased it.
Yeah.
Is that how you feel?
Yeah. But this has been going on for quite some time. Like when there are a lot of people who've used culture war issues And it's quite easy to, it's very lazy thinking, isn't it? Because you can say, oh, are you Martha or Arthur? And it can be quite, it's that old discourse on Twitter. I get it all the time. I mean, if this goes out on social media, just take a look at the comments underneath it, because you'll just get people saying, oh, that's a man. Why, Frida's just a bloke and all this, and that's just the way and we're kind of immune to it now. It's kind of like we almost tell each other, well, if you're going to go online, you've got to take the rough with the smooth. And I, like young trans people, I say, please stay off Twitter. Just don't bother, because if you think, unless you're there for that kind of argument, and it's just going to damage you, because it's so bad now.
Do you see
especially on like.
Sorry to jump in. Do you see a link between the two things we're talking about? Do you see a link between the language that's been used by, say, Rishi Sunak today and the sort of abuse that you're talking about trans people receiving in the real world and on social media?
Well, of course, yeah, because it emboldens that. If people are emboldened to say things, and I mean, there's always going to be people out there that don't understand me and don't understand why I'm trans. And it's not my job necessarily to educate everybody. But when you create a social media climate where saying things is permissible and abusing people just for being different, and that's basically what it is. Trans people have very little power to fight back in numbers. We're a very small minority of a minority. And there's not many people will go on. I'll come on the radio because I'm gobby, I don't mind talking to people on the radio. But most of the trans people I know are really shy. They just want to be left alone. And when they do make that leap of being visible on social media, in real life, they know that's a risk they're taking, because it's only because they've had the strength to be visible and to live a life that they want to. They know they're going to get criticism for it. So when the Prime Minister seems to be siding with the bullies, and you'd like to think, wouldn't you, like we live in a very progressive democracy, or we're supposed to do, you'd like to think the Prime Minister would recognise that that is not going to help anybody. It'll just make a minority of people's lives worse.
Do you think he should apologise, Freda? Do you think he should apologise, or given what you're saying, would that just be an empty gesture?
It would be an empty gesture, because he would have to apologise for like 2 years, and Suella Braverman before that, and even like Boris Johnson before that, because it just seems to be the mode of operation of the Tory party now to indulge in like very, very polarised culture war stuff, and that. So apology now just seems a little too late. I was at the Tory party conference last October, and he said exactly the same thing there. I mean, I spoke to a lot of people there because that's what I do. I go around and interview people, and most people, they just, oh yeah, you're trans, so what? And that should be the attitude. It shouldn't be an issue unless I'm actually talking about a specific thing about being trans, like I am with you now. It's not in the forefront of people's mind, because people should have more to think about in the world, but like the cost of living crisis. It
makes it more, exactly. It puts it higher up the agenda by the fact that senior politicians keep bringing it up time and time again, week after week. Freda, thank you so much. Freda Wallace, trans activist, host of the Freda Media podcast. Listening to that was Debbie Hayton.